Hello! Welcome to my channel. My name is Krista Llewellyn and I'm a makeup artist and a makeup educator, and today I'm going to show you how to properly break down and clean your airbrush gun. Now, if you are a makeup artist who utilizes airbrush, be it for bridal, special effects, or even body painting, it's really super important for you to learn how to properly break down your gun and to properly clean it. I notice a lot of makeup artists will just either run an airbrush cleaner through their gun or some 99% alcohol, something like that, to try to clean it out. And that's really not enough. But to properly clean your airbrush gun, you need to break it down. A lot of people are usually confused about why I fully break it down, but this is going to help your airbrush stay working for a long time. So fully breaking it down and cleaning it after every use is the best way to keep it from sputtering, from clogging, and to overall improve the life of the airbrush. So with that, I'm gonna go show you how to first properly break your airbrush down, showing you a couple of different tools to use, and as well as showing you what to use to actually clean out your product and what tools to use to clean out every little part. Now, I'm using an airbrush gun that has been run through with alcohol-based airbrush paint, so I will be using 99% alcohol to clean it, but your cleaning product will depend on the actual base of the airbrush paint that you're using. So something that's a silicone airbrush paint, you'll want to use something like 244. If it's a water-based airbrush paint, you can use water to clean off the product. And for me, I'm going to be using 99% alcohol because I usually use alcohol-based paints. So I have my station set up for cleaning my airbrush. I have my vinyl mat, which just helps with any sort of spillage. It's easy to clean up. You can sanitize it beforehand, so I really like working on top of these vinyl surfaces. I also have a cup full of 99% alcohol. You can also use airbrush cleaning liquids. There's one from Graftobian. But for me, what I like to do is I'll clean it with my 99% alcohol, and then I'll go and spray the Graftobian through the airbrush itself. That's sort of like my final stage. So this is our airbrush that we're cleaning. This is the one I used for my zombie hand tutorial. So it's got lots of stuff on it. Typically I'll soak it right after, but since I wanted to do this video, I didn't like soak it right away. It's always best to either run some alcohol through or let it sit in a little bit of alcohol right after. It sort of prevents anything from breaking or some clogs, things like that. Yeah, so this is our subject for today. We have our cup with alcohol. I also have a few other tools here that are going to be very useful in cleaning. I'll go over some of the tools that come with the airbrushes first. So I have these little wrenches. This is the one that came with my Iwata Eclipse. So this takes off this big top section here. But this little guy is actually very useful for this airbrush as well, though it did not come with it. This came with my Iwata Neo that I used to have that was stolen from me, but I still had this little guy because it was stolen because I had it set up in a trailer and it was just like a thing of opportunity and they grabbed it. So I still have my little wrench from it, and it's perfect for the tiny little nozzle that's underneath all of this cone section here, and I'll show you that when we get there. But I love these two tools, and this is like sort of a super essential tool for me. And you want to use the ones that they give you and not necessarily use something like a multi-tool. And I'll say that because sometimes multi-tools can have little teeth on the pliers, and this metal in particular is a little bit softer. So if you were to use something that like a wrench that has teeth, or a set of pliers that has teeth, it will actually like cut into the metal itself. So you want to use something that's flat like this, like a proper wrench. Aside from wrenches, I also have two brushes. So this one is just like a soft, like small paintbrush. I use this mostly to clean the bowl of my airbrush. I have this on hand when I'm actually doing a makeup and airbrushing because I can sort of clean out the pigment pretty quickly. And then I use this guy mostly because it has long, sturdier bristles. And what I do for this one is I use it to help me get all the way through the tiny, thin little opening of the nozzle. And this will help to guarantee that that is fully cleaned and cleared. But I'll show you that when we get there as well. And then I have these little pipe cleaner things. So this is an airbrush key. It has several different sizes of pipe cleaners. So there's like these two bigger sizes. This one used to be bigger, but I have used it to death. And then these guys are smaller, thinner ones. These are good to get all the way through and into the airbrush. And then I also have this little guy, which is actually a teeth cleaner. I got this at Daiso, but you can get them at like CVS and Walgreens as well. These are meant to clean in between teeth or in between braces. And it's really, really good when these guys are too big. So it's like super tiny and can get into the nozzle area. So those are the tools that we're working with. And the first step of cleaning is going to be to break down your airbrush gun. Now this is something that when I was in school and was learning airbrush, we did this the entire first day. This is all we did, was break down and rebuild our airbrushes. So it's super important for you to know how to properly do that so you could properly clean your airbrush. A lot of people just run a bunch of alcohol through or run an airbrush cleaner through their airbrush and they don't bother to break down their full airbrush. And then they always complain that there's some sort of problem with their airbrush, or there's clogging, or there's sputtering or something. It's because you're not fully breaking down the airbrush. There's lots of stuff that can get stuck in this back area here, especially if you're back bubbling to mix colors. So it's good to fully break it down and to clean all of the product. And this will guarantee that your airbrush will last you for a long time. And it's important to know how to break it down properly. So we're actually going to start at the back of the airbrush here. I don't know the proper names for all of these different sections, so I apologize if there's some airbrush expert who knows all of these little names for all these parts, but I am not as aware of them. So I'm going to take off the back section here, and that reveals the needle, or the back of the needle. This guy, yeah, I'll clean him just to show you how I clean them. That end section, unless it's pretty dirty, I don't usually clean it because it's the part that's least likely to get dirty. Same with this little guy here, but for the video I'm just going to clean everything. But you'll want to take off this. This is the actual nut that's holding the needle into place. And then I'm going to slide out my needle very carefully. And you can see that even up into here, so that's past where the bowl is, there's paint all on that needle. So it's always good to take the needle out. Now, again, you want to be very gentle with this because if you bend this needle point, it can ruin your airbrush and you can get sputtering and stuff. So I'm just going to very gently place it into my alcohol. The next step is to take off this little section here. So this part is the mechanism that holds this into place, which is holding the needle into place, and actually is what is holding everything in so you could pull it back. Again, I don't know the names of any of these. But you want to take that out. There's a spring in here, very important as well. Sometimes this is another part that I'll sometimes clean, but we'll clean it for today. Then there's this little guy, the thing that holds the needle in place and actually is resting against the trigger here, and this is what is pushing it back and forth. Then I'm going to take out the trigger itself. And now we can move on to the front part. So the reason why I do all of this is to make sure that at no time is the point of the needle exposed. If I were to take off all of this front section here, then the needle would be kind of vulnerable and just sitting out there. So you want to take the needle out first and all the mechanisms that are holding the back of the needle, and then go to the front cone section here. And this is the area that's usually the dirtiest. So I'm going to take this front little cone off. This is the part that I will take off when I'm doing veining or fine detail. This sort of helps to create that spray shape. And then on at least this particular gun, and obviously this process depends on what kind of airbrush gun you are using. Again, this is a Iwata Eclipse. Pachets open a bit differently. Single action guns will open differently. So it's always good to go to the company's website and see if they have any instructions on how to properly break down your airbrush gun. But there's this front little section in here that holds that front cone. And that exposes this tiny little nozzle here. So this is where the very, very tip of the needle rests. So this little front nozzle here is probably one of the most, aside from the needle, is one of the most vulnerable parts of your airbrush. If you over tighten it, or if there's a bunch of paint that's stuck in there and you're trying to loosen it, it can break off in the nozzle that it is screwed into. And this tiny little, like, not even a pinky nail size part is like $25 just for this small amount of metal. Usually the smaller the part, the more expensive it is on an airbrush. So it's very important not to break this. I have broken it once and I've had to replace it, so I'm always very gentle with it. And that's also another reason why I don't usually let airbrush paint sit in there, because it can get into the threads of this front cone here and it can get stuck and then you break it off in there. So this is where my Iwata Neo wrench comes in. It is the perfect size for this little guy. And you always want to think righty tighty, lefty loosey. So I'm going left and just barely enough to be able to loosen it so I can get it off. So this tiny little bit goes into here. Make sure that you are aware of where that's going when you're cleaning it. You want to make sure that you're holding on to it pretty tightly. If it falls on the floor, it is a little difficult to find. So always keep track of your parts. Now I'm going to take off this section here. And the reason why I don't take this off before I take off that tiny little guy is because this section is actually holding the cone that it's screwed into in place. So it's a little bit easier to loosen when this part is still on there. I'm taking this off now as well. And that reveals this little cone that tiny little guy was screwed into. And sometimes this part can get stuck in this section here when you go to take it off. Then I'll usually just like throw it into the alcohol as like a full unit so that the paint that's like trapping it in there sort of loosens up. Then you take off this guy. And this is usually sold with the small nozzle as well, so you can't just buy them separately. They come as a unit. And then you have just the body of your airbrush. This section here is a quick release for my hose. I'm gonna just keep it on there. I'm not gonna break that part down. So we just have the rest of the body on here, which you wanna try to get as much of the body in the alcohol as you can. But for the most part, I want to keep the cup sitting in there. And I'll let it sort of sit for a little bit. For the purpose of this video, we'll go straight into the cleaning process. Oh, also, I forgot to talk about, I'm currently wearing gloves as I'm doing this. You don't necessarily need to, but the alcohol can be really harsh on your skin, as well as like your nail polish and stuff. If you wear nail polish, it can sort of dry it up, and so the ends start to come up. So I'm just wearing gloves to help me in this process. I also have on hand a little spray bottle of 99% alcohol, and that will help me in this next step here. So the first thing I usually like doing is I'll take a paper towel and I'll clean the needle first, because I don't want this sort of bouncing around in the cup there. So with a paper towel and the little spritz, I very gently wipe the needle. There you go, nice and clean. Put that aside. So that's just gonna sit there until we get the front half of the airbrush clean. Now I'm gonna do the body of the airbrush, and what I just did, and I'll show it again, is as I'm taking it out of the alcohol, I cover this front section here, and that sort of keeps a little pool of alcohol in the cup itself. Then I take my brush and I just go to town cleaning the inside, scraping the walls. You can also use your bigger pipe cleaner. That helps with like any sort of stubborn paint that's stuck, especially on this rim here. And I'll just release that. You can see all of that coloring that just fell out of there. Also want to clean the body of the gun, like the outside. I usually get a lot of spillage around the front of the cup here when I'm mixing colors together. It's really easy to get the color onto your gloves, and it will sort of stick onto the surface as you're cleaning, so making sure your gloves are clean so they're not transferring. Doing a surface clean for right now. I'll go through and really do a deeper clean on the body after we're done with the inside of it. So now we have that. I'm gonna take this bigger guy first, and this won't go all the way through. It sort of stops in the bowl here. But I'm just gonna use this pipe cleaner to clean this front section here, because this hole here is a little bit bigger than the hole that goes all the way back. And I'll clean the threads as well. And then I'll take this really, really tiny one here. It like barely has any hairs on it. I'm gonna make sure that it's threading all the way through the hole in here and out the back. So this is going through and cleaning the length of where the needle sits. And you really want to make sure you get all the way to the back there, because like I showed you earlier, the needle did have some paint on it, even back here. And then I'll also take the bigger side and clean where the trigger is. That way there's no paint in there for the trigger to get stuck. So that's all nice and clean on the inside. I'm gonna take some clean alcohol and just spritz all over. If it's just falling out of the front here, that means it's nice and clear. And wipe it down. And look how beautiful. Nice and shiny, just like it originally came to you. If you have any sort of paint left on your airbrush, it is not clean enough, and therefore you need to clean it more. Like literally any sort of drop, anywhere in the bowl, anywhere on the nozzle, anywhere on the body, it is not clean enough. It should look like you got it straight out of the package. And especially if you're borrowing one of my airbrushes, it better come back this. And cleaning your airbrush to this extent will extend the life of it. So you won't have to get it serviced as much, you won't have as much sputtering, as much clogging, if you properly keep it clean. So we'll put this aside from now. And now, since we are rebuilding the airbrush back up, we're gonna work backwards from where we did with taking it apart. So I'm gonna start with that first cone. So I have my tiny little cone. We're gonna start with that. This is the first item that we should be putting in when rebuilding your airbrush. And I'm gonna start out with my little teeth cleaner guy. This is perfect to go all the way through. With most anything on your airbrush to clean, you wanna make sure that it can go all the way through. If your brush just like sticks here, there's no guarantee that you're fully clearing out this front section. So that's why I like this little teeth cleaning guy. And to check to make sure it is totally clean, it will be hard to see on camera, but you'll want to be able to look through this bigger side here. Yeah. See how you can see through to the paper towel there? That means it is perfectly cleaned. A little spritz of the clean alcohol just to get any sort of color residue off. And that fits right onto here. Put that in, set it aside. The next guy is going to be the piece that keeps that locked in place. Again, you want to clean off the surface. And then I'm going to take one of my bigger brushes on my airbrush key. Again, have it go all the way through. And then twirl it around to get into those threads. Really important to get the airbrush paint out of the threads, otherwise it won't close properly. And then you'll have some air leakage in your airbrush. But also, if the paint is wet and gets stuck in there, it can sort of lock the threads in so you can't undo it. A little spritz, spritz. So now we place this on, and you want to finger tighten it first. And then as soon as it's tightened enough with your fingers, you're just going to take the wrench and do one more little tighten. Don't over tighten it. Just that little extra hair more. Not a whole lot of effort, just turning it slightly. You don't want to over tighten any of the screws on here. So the next section that we need to clean is that tiny little guy. It might be hard to see on camera because my fingers are going to be too big for it, but I'll explain it. First I have to find it. It's the hardest thing to find in here. There you are. Okay. So this tiny little nozzle is so small. I like to work over my cup. That way, if it falls, it will fall into the cup and stay in the cup and won't roll off the table. There has been times where I have not done this and then it falls on the floor, especially if it's on a carpeted floor. And then it's just impossible to find. So I recommend doing it over your cup. I'm gonna start with my little teeth cleaner just for this front part, or the back part of it. It won't go all the way through to the front here, but this sort of gets out any big chunks. And I like to do the threads as well. And then we move on to this brush here. So what I'm gonna do is just isolate a few of these hairs and poke them all the way through. So again, you wanna make sure that it goes all the way through to sort of guarantee that you're cleaning this whole section up here. I'll give it like a little twirl. I'll sort of go back and forth with it. I'll do another pass. And depending on how wide the opening is, you can either get a few hairs in there or a single hair. But that sort of guarantees that that front section is properly cleaned. And really, this is the only thing that will be able to go all the way through, is like a thinner hair like that. But you want them to be fairly sturdy so that you can force it into there. And then you want to very, very carefully screw this back on. Again, finger tightening it first. And then finishing it off with your wrench. Just an extra. Don't go any further than that. You don't want to like wrench it all the way forward. You just want to slightly tighten it. And be very gentle with this when you're placing it down. And then the next part is the little guy that keeps that small part in and also attaches the front cone section. Use the bigger side for those threads in here. Use the smaller tooth guy to go all the way through. This guy goes back on, and this is only finger tightened. You don't have to wrench that one closed, like so. Then we got the front cone, this guy. Cleaning the surface with the brush. And cleaning it with the pipe cleaner or airbrush key. This is the part that usually gets the dirtiest. Finger tightening that on. So this is different on every airbrush, but on Iwata airbrushes, there's usually a little bit of a groove or a little notch that's taken out of the underside of the trigger here. And what that is sort of indicating which side should be facing the front and which side should be facing the back. So you always want this groove to go towards the back of your airbrush. So as we're putting it in, you want that little dangly dude to slide right in and down. That little guy is what's actually connecting to get that sort of bounce there. And the notch goes to the back, and it's made so that if it was to be pulled all the way back, it sort of like fits right onto the body there. So notch to the back. Our trigger is in. The next part is this guy. I don't know the name. It's the part that actually holds the needle in place and connects to the trigger itself. Again, you want to clean it on the surface. Then I'm going to use that smallest guy to clean all the way through. And I like to take my brush to this little foot here. Again, you want it to be loose. You want it to sort of freely be able to bounce about. And now when we go to put this in, what's really important is to keep this little notch up here. You can see it kind of has like almost like a shovel shape, where if this is like the actual like spade of the shovel and this goes up into the handle, you want this little notch to go up. So it's so hard to see on the camera, but you want that little notch up. And what you do is you sort of get it, and you can kind of see that little guy poking out on top here. And that's connecting to the trigger. So it's just gonna loosely sit in there for now because we need this guy, which actually holds it into place. So cleaning the threads, cleaning the inside. That one doesn't usually need as much attention. It's usually fairly clean. I like to hold my trigger down and then screw this into place. And for this gun, you'll keep screwing it into place until it stops. On my Pache, it will just like continue to thread in. And then I usually like to line up these little notches here with the body. But this one stops, so we don't have to worry about that. And that keeps that whole mechanism in place. Oh, but I made a rookie mistake. Now, okay, let me show you with this in. So I made the mistake of not putting the spring back in here. So because of that, if I were to pull this trigger back, it's gonna stay back. This is gonna not really be able to bounce back and forth. So you always want to remember your spring. Because I'm talking to a camera. So we got your little spring. Very, 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 very important. And that spring fits right over this guy in here, like so. Then you put this on. And now this is able to sort of bounce back with that spring. Now that all of that mechanism is in place, we can actually thread our needle through. So again, I like to hold the trigger down, and you want to very gently push the needle in. And you want to push it until it stops. You don't want to force it all the way through because it can split that front cone. Thread that onto there until it stops. And then this guy, threading that back on. And now I'll give it a last final spray with some clean alcohol to make sure the body looks nice and purty. But yeah, that's how you clean your airbrush. And now what I would normally do is plug it back into my compressor and run a little bit of that Graftobian airbrush cleaner through it just to make sure everything is nice and clear. But I'm not gonna set up my full compressor again because I've already had it put away. So if I don't do it immediately after I clean it the first time, I'll run it through right before I do any other airbrushing. So that is it. That is how you clean your double action airbrush. So specifically Iwata, specifically double action, single action airbrushes are a little bit easier to clean because they don't fully break down like this. But most double action airbrushes will be able to fully break down. And it's always important that you do so. Cool, now it's clean. So that was it. That was how you properly break down your airbrush gun and clean it thoroughly. As you can see, I took down every little single part and properly cleaned it to its fullest extent. So I hope you found it pretty informative. If you have any questions about the process, you can leave a comment below. I also have my Instagram that I always check my messages, and I love getting questions in my DMs. So you can follow me at Krista Llewellyn MUA on Instagram. And if you liked this video, go ahead and give it a little like and a subscribe to my channel as well. I go over a bunch of different aspects of makeup. And in the last video that I did, I actually used my airbrush to create zombie skin, only using the airbrush, maybe a few brushes here and there. But for the most part, it was just airbrush. So you can go ahead and watch videos like that and a bunch of other cool makeup ones if you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. None of that was recorded because I had it on mute. Well, goddamn.